Hi, welcome to the 2022 Juried Student Art Exhibition video series. I'm Jennifer Restari Dickinson, Director of Education at the Stark Museum of Art, and today I'm going to be talking about this year's theme. So we're going to dive right into the 2022 theme of Juxtaposed. So let's get going. Now, before we talk all things theme, let's take a minute to go over some general details about this year's Juried Student Art Exhibition. Juxtaposed 2022 Juried Student Art Exhibition will be on view March 16th through May 14th of 2022. It is an exhibit of student artwork, and it is judged by our staff here at the Stark Museum of Art. The exhibit will include up to 100 works of art created by 4th through 12th grade student artists here in Region 5, Texas, as well as in Calcasieu Parish, Louisiana. Artwork will be displayed in the museum's community art gallery located in our Walter G. Riddle III Education Center, and it will also be featured in an online exhibition. Thousands of students come through our student art gallery every year, as well as we get thousands of visitors to the online exhibit. The Juried Student Art Exhibition also will accompany a new special exhibition here at the museum called Enlarging the View, Contemporary Photographs and Connections that will be on view February 25th through August 27th of 2022. Now, our 2022 theme, artwork, should depict an image that illustrates the concept of juxtaposed. So what is juxtaposed? What does it mean to be juxtaposed? Well, if we were to define it, it's two things together that show contrasts or similarities. Another way you could think of it is that opposites attract. You could call it a funny or an odd comparison, or it might be unexpected things or ideas that are shown side by side. So how do we create an artwork that shows juxtaposition? I raided the icebox and found some artists from the museum's collection that handled this challenge. So let's take a look. When I started thinking about this, I wondered, can animals be juxtaposed? Well, certainly. And I've got two examples here from our collection for you. On the right, we have a classic sculpture from artist Frederick Remington called the Rattlesnake. Now, what are some juxtapositions that we can see in this work of art? The first thing that comes to mind for me is small versus big. When I look at how large that horse is in comparison to how tiny that rattlesnake is, we have to look very closely to see that rattlesnake at the bottom on the base of this popping up. But something else that stands out to me about this work of art is the contrast between being scared versus being scary. So when we think about this sculpture, that horse rearing back is its reaction because it's scared. And what is it scared of? It's scared of the rattlesnake. So we have another juxtaposition there that we can consider. On the left, we have a photograph that will be in our new exhibition. And this photograph by artist Melanie Walker is called Rabbit. Look closely. What do you notice? This isn't a rabbit at all. In fact, we see a human figure wearing a rabbit mask, and she's even holding some type of rabbit puppet. We also have an interesting background going on that creates kind of a surreal effect. So here we have kind of a contrast of human versus animal, a juxtaposition, two things that maybe don't normally belong together, put together. So these are both examples of juxtaposed. Now, another great place to look for juxtapositions is going to be in nature. And we pulled two great photos out for you to see here. Let's start with the photo on the right. And interestingly enough, this is actually camera-less photography. This artist, Sheila Pinkle, uses equipment, a zero radiograph, to create this print. Now, what we're looking at is a plant, specifically a thistle. What kind of juxtapositions do you notice? What contrasts do you see? One thing that stands out to me is the contrast of rigidity versus fluidity. So when we look at these hard, crisp lines of the thistle, they're balanced with the curving fluid lines as well. So we have two different types of things kind of competing, creating a juxtaposition. But we can dig even deeper on that juxtaposition and think about our subject matter. That's what's featured in our artwork. And when we look at this work of art, we actually see another juxtaposition, and that is the mature versus the seedling. So we have that mature thistle in the center. We can see kind of the cylindrical rounded cone shape of it. But to the left and to the right, we can see different states of the flower in kind of the seedling and developing form. So there's another juxtaposition, and stages of life might be a way to think of it. Now we're talking about nature, so you could look at plants, you could look at flowers, you could look at trees, you might look at the developing landforms. That might be something, the juxtaposition that you could look at. Now, on the left, we have another photograph, and this is an image by artist Daryl Curran called Box of Leaves. One of the things that struck me immediately when I saw this is that we have kind of a box in a box here, right? So the photograph itself is a box. In fact, it's printed on another box, a piece of paper. So we have a rectangular piece of paper with a rectangular photograph, and then this rectangular box that is actually holding the leaves. So this is a great play on a box in a box or a shape in a shape. So this is a juxtaposition that you could play with. But we also have another juxtaposition of kind of a man versus nature. So we know that this photograph is called Box of Leaves, but as we look at it, there's a lot more happening here. There's a floral print kind of fabric. There are other items, man-made items that are surrounding it. And certainly that box of leaves had to be gathered. So there's been an intervention here. So certainly another juxtaposition that we could consider. Now, home is always a great place to look for inspiration. And here we've got another great example for you. So we've got two different images, both depicting home in very different ways. On the right, we see a painting by artist John Young Hunter. This is called Taos Front Door. It's actually out on view at the Stark Museum of Art in our special exhibition, The West is Home. What are some contrasts, some similarities, some juxtapositions that you notice in this work? The first thing that I notice is we've got kind of an inside versus outside happening, right? So when we look at this work, this picture is of the inside, but we have lots of windows out. So there's that doorway, and we can see through that curtain outside, as well as in that back, towards the back, we see that window. There's kind of some warm colors working, perhaps suggesting leaves outside. So an inside versus outside. So that's something that you can work with. You also have a contrast of the color in this work of art, specifically those reds and blues. Notice the detail of the door frame, kind of the there's kind of a red square on that door, as well as those reds and oranges and yellows back there towards the back where that window is, in contrast to the cool blues of the door, even that curtain kind of blowing through the door, the shadows and the walls of this space. That color choice is a juxtaposition. It's a choice that you could use. We also have kind of another juxtaposition with the contrast of ornate and simplicity. So when we look at this door, it's covered with these kind of gold bosses. The frame and the lintel, that's the top part of that door, are really detailed and ornate. They look like they may have some different influences, perhaps maybe some Asian cultural influences here. So that's in comparison to the smoothness of what we can assume is an adobe structure based in Taos. That smoothness of the walls, look at the smoothness of the column, and even that kind of pony wall there behind the door. We can see that strong contrast. Now, doorways make great juxtapositions because they're a gateway, and they're a gateway between the inside and outside. Now, in the same way, we see another gateway with Richard S. Buswell's photograph, Bedroom. Now, this bedroom, we're inside, we're looking outside. So you've got that inside versus outside again, right? But we've also got some other juxtapositions here. What are some words that you might think of when you think of a bedroom? Maybe you think comfortable, safe. Does this bedroom evoke that for you? I know I certainly wouldn't want to spend the night in this bedroom. Well, that's another juxtaposition that you can see here. So maybe in a picture, if you were to do a space that shows two different feelings or emotions or a conflicting feeling, that might be another way you could do a juxtaposition. Another way we have a contrast and a juxtaposition in this work of art is the black and white nature of this photograph. Buswell is known for his high contrast and dramatic lighting. He actually photographs abandoned ghost towns and structures in Montana, and this work is right within his overture here. But that black and white contrast is also a juxtaposition that we consider. So one way to consider a juxtaposition is in your choice of color. We see this here in both of these works with the black and white or the red and the blue in that John Young Hunter painting. Now, juxtaposed things are not just in our home, they're not just in nature, they're all around us, and they're definitely in our world. And we've got two very different photos here. Now, these will also be on view in our special exhibition and paired with their connections. But when we think about juxtaposed in context to these works of art, the first thing I want to talk about is that work on the right, Sky, Sea, and Railing, Mexico by Barry Anderson. What are some contrasts that you notice? You may have started out thinking about, well, we were just talking about that gateway theme and the inside versus outside. We're definitely looking out from some type of structure, right? Like we're on a balcony or a veranda looking out. So we're sort of outside, but we're still inside. And so there's this nice gateway between the two, which I think can really work well as a juxtaposition. We also have that nature versus man-made thing happening again here. So we have the man-made structure, the railing, the columns. We can see whatever the ground is here, that dark kind of brown color. But then the mass part of the composition is ocean and sky. So nature versus man here is another juxtaposition that we see. Now, the last thing I want to talk about is kind of a conceptual thought, but this is in the subject matter, and this is the concept of fluidity versus rigidity. So when I'm saying that, what I want to think about is that fluid structure of the water. Like, yes, we see it's in straight lines, but we can see kind of the changing ripples of it. Look at the kind of undulating pattern of the clouds, right? So that's kind of fluid compared to the rigidity of that balcony or that railing and columns. So that's another juxtaposition that you could think about. And as you think about materials, you might think of the juxtaposition against soft and hard, loud and quiet, maybe big and small is another one you could think of. Now, on our left, we have a photograph by Robert von Sternberg, Silvis Oil Company, Ventura, California. And this has another great pair of opposites that it highlights as we think about a juxtaposition. And we'll start with that. What do you notice about this photograph? Do you notice how bright the gas station is compared to the dark surroundings? So here we have light versus dark. Now, another juxtaposition that we see in this is this concept of what a gas station is. When we look at this gas station is designed to service a lot of people, right? I'm looking and I see at least 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, maybe 8 different stops with multiple pumps per stop on both sides. Yet it's designed to be busy, but it is empty. And so we have this contrast, this juxtaposition of busy versus empty. That's another concept that we can think of, something that could be busy, but is currently empty. Now, the last way I want to think about a juxtaposed is within art itself. Can art itself be juxtaposed? And I've got two different images for us to consider here. The first on the right I want to talk about is a painting by artist William Herbert Dunton, and it's called Crouching in the Stern with One Oar Deep. He was hurled on his errand of mercy. So we see here this boat kind of, and ship, maybe a more accurate description on the right, being kind of overtaken by a wave. And to the left, there's a figure in a small kind of dingy little rowboat. And the title suggests that perhaps he's on an errand of mercy. Is he trying to rescue someone? What can't we see here? Now, I pulled this painting because this painting is a juxtaposition in itself, because we see it as a painting, but this is actually an illustration for a story. So this would be something that we could consider. This was a painting, but intended to be illustrated in a book. We also have this super dramatic scene, and we talked about contrast earlier with colors, but I want to contrast that this dramatic scene is in all of these muted colors. Now, because we know this was an illustration, we know it's black and white because most likely it was going to be reproduced, and that gave the artist the most control over those colors. However, a juxtaposition you could make is in choosing a dramatic topic and doing it in a color palette that doesn't, maybe is opposite or makes us think differently. Now, on the left, I have a digital photograph. This is another work that you can see in the collection and in the exhibition in this spring by artist Michael Stone. It's called Western Art #2, and I love this photograph. But before I say any more about it, let's take a close look. What's happening here? Kind of reminds me of that box in a box. Here we have a picture within a picture. So the artist is taking a photograph, but he's photographed the frame of another image, or imposed in the frame of another image. And this particular artist is known for some of his digital manipulations. So how could a juxtaposition that you create use a similar format? Could you create two pictures within one? Kind of a diptych is another way to think of that. Which frame is real in this picture? So we see the photograph of the outdoors, but we also have maybe I think that looks like a big rig to me driving away from us in the distance. It does kind of make us question which frame is real, and it starts to play with a little bit of surrealism. And my teachers, this would be a great point for you to take a moment to introduce your students to artists like Rene Magritte or Salvador Dali, The Persistence of Memory, or exploring Magritte's Pipe. These are both great examples of surrealism, and surrealism also often uses juxtapositions for us to explore. But there's one more thing I want to talk about with this Michael Stone photograph too that you could consider in juxtaposition, and that is it a photo? Is it a painting? So with the medium, could you juxtapose mediums? Now, I told you this artist is known for his digital photo manipulations, and we certainly see kind of some brushstrokes happening within that frame. But does it have to be photo versus painting? Could you have color versus a juxtaposition of color versus not color, a juxtaposition of collage versus hand-drawn, or painting versus drawing? That's a whole nother way that you could, approaching the juxtaposition by medium is another way that you could think about how you're going to create your work of art. How will you define juxtaposed? Well, first, you can think inside and outside of the box. So we can do that thinking like artist Michael Stone with a frame within a frame, or Daryl Kern with a box of leaves within a box of a photograph. That's certainly something that we could think about. So you could use compositional devices. You could unify two dissimilar objects. So two things that don't normally go together, you could put together and make work in a different way. You might find a silly or irreverent comparison. Now, I will say, our rule of thumb is that your teacher and your principal need to sign off on it as far as subject matter. So certainly something that would be family friendly, but you might be able to find something that could poke fun a little bit. You could use contrasting colors. We saw that with both color, with the contrast of the red and the blue, but also the black and white, the muted colors in that painting at the end. You might find a strange pairing to put together that somehow works. You could look in the world between nature and humans. You also might use gateways. Remember, we talked a lot about doors, porches, balconies, windows. Another suggestion to think about would be a mirror. What happens when you look in the mirror and it's not what you see? Those are all suggestions on how you could explore that. Now, one big thing as you think about your medium, before you start, you need to remember that all artwork for this exhibition has to be two-dimensional and no bigger than 9 inches by 12 inches. Now, as you think about what you want to make, some things you might consider. Pencil, colored pencil, pen and ink, Sharpie, watercolor, paint, mixed media, other two-dimensional media. I've had collage. I even have had some students do some textile work where they've done some sewing or embroidery work, digital media, even photography. It's just got to be that 9 inch by 12 inch, no bigger than 9 inch by 12 inch, at least 8 inches by 10 inches. Now, I have a few important dates I want to review with you before we wrap up today. The first is that artwork must be received here at the Stark Museum of Art by Wednesday, February 2nd, 2022 at 5 p.m. That's basically the end of our business day. Teachers, please have that artwork either postmarked or physically here by February 2nd. We will announce the student artists who will be featured in the exhibition, as well as our award winners on our website no later than Wednesday, March 2nd. Starkmuseum.org will be the home where you will find that information. It'll be up on our homepage. I also generally send an email to our teachers who submit entries, so you should be looking out for it by that point. All of the artwork that's submitted that meets our requirements of submission is going to be scanned and featured in a digital exhibit, and it gets displayed here in the museum with the student art exhibition as well as online. So all entries will have an opportunity to be viewed by the public. Now, we are tentatively scheduling our Juried Student Art Reception for Wednesday, April 6th from 2022 from 5 to 8 p.m. We're looking forward to hosting that event back here at the museum in person. Now, one last thing I want to note is that all artwork that is submitted by Orange County Schools, public and private actually, will be delivered back to that school on Tuesday, May 17th. We're making that commitment to return that artwork to you teachers to make it a little easier. Now, if you are a homeschool student or outside of Orange County, we will have your artwork ready to be picked up here at the museum between May 18th and 21st. You just need to come up and pick your artwork up. If for some odd reason you cannot pick up during those dates, if you coordinate with us, we certainly are willing to accommodate that. You just need to be in contact with us. Now, this is the least favorite part of things that I have to go over, but I do need to review with you that artwork that is not picked up will be deemed donated, and it can be discarded or used for other purposes as deemed appropriate by the museum. I've never had that happen, but unfortunately we have to have that in there. So please be sure to pick up your artwork from us if you so that your students can get that back, because I know you're going to work hard on it. If as you're working, you come up with questions, is this a good juxtaposition? Does this work? I'm concerned about the topic. Please feel free to email me or to contact me in my office. Your teachers can reach out to me. We are available for questions and happy to answer those as they come up. We are so looking forward to seeing your entries for our 2022 exhibition. I think this topic has a lot of possibility. Remember, it can be a juxtaposition of materials. It can be a juxtaposition of topic, of subject, of, you can use those gateways. You've got lots of options here. So I am looking forward to seeing your entries, and I wish you the best of luck as you work on those, and happy making.